Wow, this is SUMELEVATE checking in with you again. This time I have Aaron with me. How's it going, Aaron?
Going awesome, bro. How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good myself. I'm up here in sunny California. How about yourself?
I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, so pretty
Sweet.
close.
Yeah, that's great, man. So, thank you so much for doing this, man. It means a lot to me, and I'm
Thank you for
so,
having me on. I appreciate you.
yeah, man. All right, so let's get started. How did you start your kind of self-development journey? I know that you've had ADD, but like once you started
Yeah,
to view that as a strength, it changed your life in
yeah,
really
yeah.
great ways. You
hmm
want to talk a bit about that, or?
Yeah, I mean that's really where my journey really began. Was when I was growing up. I grew up and I had to take Adderall, which is what they prescribe to people who do have ADHD.
Yeah,
And I took that the last couple years of high school, and then for about 4 or 5 years after that.
yeah,
And one of like the side effects of Adderall is that when you take it, it makes it harder for you to sleep at night, and it makes it
mm,
harder for you to eat as well. So
yeah,
even though it was something that like I was able to, it benefited me like during the day to get things done. At the
yeah,
same time, there were like harsh side effects of it.
mm,
So
yeah,
what I decided to do is after a while of having those side effects, I decided that I would do my own research in a way. So
yeah,
what I did was is I just did a little bit of research and looked about came across meditation, and it talked about how powerful meditation is
mm,
for being able to make people feel focused, but also it does something to the brain where it makes the brain waves more coherent, which
mm,
means that where people that have ADHD, a lot of times the brain waves tend to not be so coherent.
yeah,
What happens is through the act of meditation itself, it can get to the point to where then your brain has that coherence, so that it's easier to stay focused or to be
yeah,
in the moment, even with ADHD. So when I started reading about it,
mm,
I decided that I would just give it a try. And really, it was just something that I wanted to try out of curiosity,
yeah,
just because it was something that if it had all of these like benefits that it was saying that it had, it's like why not just try it? So that's what
mm,
I did, and this was like probably 4 or 5 years ago.
yeah,
But what I did was is I just sat down, and what I did was is I read about some type of meditation where you just stare at a flame, because it said that that would be good for people that have trouble like focusing, because every time
yeah.
your mind would begin to wander, you could just focus on the flame again, and then what that would do is make it easier for you to keep focusing on your breath.
That sounds
and
cool.
and it, yeah, it was something that I started
Do you
doing.
remember what it was called, or?
I don't. It starts with an S though. I
Yeah.
remember that.
Hmm.
Like starts with an S. It's some type of technique, but it's just I think if you just type in on Google like candlelight meditation, that's
Hmm.
what it is. But it's
Yeah.
really like the most basic thing where all you do is you sit there, you focus on your breathing, and you stare at the flame.
Yeah.
Well, when I started doing that, within like a day or two, I started to feel differently.
Yeah.
Like I started to feel better. Like my general mood just kind of shot up,
Yeah.
and I was kind of confused at first. I'm like, why am I feeling like this?
Hmm.
I knew that there could be some type of maybe benefit when it comes to like focus, or it comes to doing
Concentration. Yeah.
exactly like doing activities and whatnot.
Hmm.
But I started to feel different, and within a week or two, I started to feel good a majority of the time.
Hmm.
And I found it easier for me like at work to focus and do whatever I had to do. So after about 2 weeks of doing that, and I just started small. I started maybe just 2 or 3 minutes a day, and then grew up on that. But the feeling became kind of like addictive in a good way. It was
Yeah.
like,
Could you describe that feeling for us? That.
yeah, I mean, it was like more of just. I think what it mainly was, especially now with the kind of work that I do,
Yeah.
is it was just I was bringing like the awareness out of my head, and people with
And then.
ADHD in
Yeah.
general, I think it's like they're mainly kind of locked into the
Hmm.
thinking mind. And what I did is I became present, which means I just like the awareness went into my body,
Yeah.
and I started to feel different. Like I remember I was going to work, and I was walking around, it just everything felt different to me, different in a good way, but just it was like a new reference point in a
Hmm.
way. But I felt better, so it was something
Yeah.
that I enjoyed uh anyways. So
Right on.
as I began to do that, I started to feel better more often. And then after 2 weeks, I completely gave up Adderall. Haven't taken it since then. And
Wow.
the supplement for that is all I do is every morning for 20 minutes right when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I meditate, and it's the 20 minutes right before I go to bed at night. And ever since then, it's been like I haven't needed Adderall at all.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that I have to do, I'm much more present with it, and it's easier for me to do it. And I believe that even with like ADHD in general, when people are labeled as having some type of like disorder or having
Mm-hmm.
something like that, it becomes the filter of the mind. How people relate to the external world becomes like
It
a way.
shifts, yeah.
Exactly.
The
Instead of
perspective, yeah.
that becomes like the reality, because anytime that you feel like you are scatterbrained, you automatically assume it's because I have ADHD.
Like, yeah, this
So it
label
means
attached to you, yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think that if people learn that we can drop these labels and not
Mm-hmm.
even label people as having ADHD to begin with,
Yeah.
we can use more holistic ways of balancing out the energy, such as just bringing awareness into the body, becoming more present, maybe learning how to ground yourself. There's a
Right.
whole bunch of different things, but I think that it can be something that can be done naturally versus having some type of pharmaceutical drug that has a whole bunch of adverse side effects.
Definitely. And I also think it's important to know what we're putting into our bodies, you
Oh,
know?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with
Like
that.
Adderall, I think may also have a numbing effect to some extent
It
because
did.
yeah.
Yeah, because when I was in high school, I remembered my last 2 years, because like now I'm more myself than I've ever been before, and that's
Mm,
because I'm not taking Adderall. It kind of like numbed my energy a little bit. Like it made me more
yeah.
like what you could call like normal, where I just sat there and just did what
Yeah.
I was supposed to do, but that wasn't really me.
Yeah.
If I would have learned how to, I think, balance myself out and to just ground myself, I think that it would have been a different story. But I'm grateful that I went through it, because I was able to learn a lot more about myself, and I was
Yeah.
able to actually have these kind of insights so that I can help people who are also on the same type of journey.
Hmm. Well, that's great to hear you say that, man. Um, so have you wanted to speak in public, or like get an audience out there most of your life, or?
Yeah, well, actually, what happened for me is I remember it was like also kind of like a shift or a transition to
Hmm.
where it was something I just wanted to try, just to step outside my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because when I was in like eighth grade, I had a presentation I had to give in front of the class, and it was like the first big presentation
Right.
that I had to give. And I remember I went in front of the class and I went to speak, and I looked out at everybody else, and I just completely couldn't remember what I was supposed to say. So
Mm,
that was like an embarrassing situation to be in. And then like 2 years later, in high school, I had the opportunity of taking forensics debate.
hmm.
And when I took it, at first it was a little bit uncomfortable for me, but as I did it more and more, in forensics debate, there's tournaments where there's certain topics, and you have to write both the
Yeah.
positive on it and the negative, like the affirmative
Uh-huh.
and the negative on it. And then what you do is you go to these tournaments, and as I did that, I ended up growing like a passion for it.
Yeah. And
So
you learned a new skill set, kind of.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I learned that I could step outside of my comfort zone and
Mm,
then do something else, but actually it became like my passion. Like
that's great.
I love speaking. For the longest time, I wanted to be a lawyer,
Hmm.
um, but more recently, even like the last like 4 or 5 years, I've decided that what I really want to do is I do want to be a speaker. I want to be somebody that empowers other people to go within and make inner transformations, and I want to be somebody that's able to like travel and do workshops or
Hmm.
something along
Yeah.
those ideas. But it's something that when I do, it's like it just feels really good. So that's kind of what I do, is I just follow the feeling in a
That's
way.
great. Yeah. Well, I'm on a similar path myself, and that's very interesting that it's great to connect, you know?
Right. With like-minded individuals,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
you're on the same type of journey. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool, man. And so, how do you really stay grounded? I know you mentioned that you
Oh yeah.
put more focus into your body, um, and but sometimes things happen that get in our way. So how do you handle situations where either you're put on the spot or you're overthinking too much? How do you get out of that loop, that
Well,
negative reinforcement?
right,
Yeah.
right. Well, what I've noticed even more recently, because like as I've been doing videos on my YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed how my energy has shifted from like the very first video I did back like 8 months
Oh
ago
yeah.
to how it is now. It's completely
Totally.
different.
I noticed that too with my videos. Yeah.
Yeah, like as you go, you learn as you go, but also you learn how to like kind of let go in front of it. You have to get used to like being in front of a camera or being
Mm-hmm.
on the spot in a way. But what's really
Yeah.
worked for me is the simple thing of just the simple kind of idea that I was talking about earlier, where you just bring the awareness out of your head and into your body,
Yeah.
and then you just take action from that point. So what
Hmm.
happens is you feel more present, and I think that grounding in general, that's what it's really about. It's always the most basic ideas when it comes to being someone that's grounded or using grounding as a tool.
Hmm.
It's the breath. So it's like as I breathe deeper, it becomes easier for me to actually like ground myself in the
Yeah.
moment. And then what I do is I bring the awareness out of my head and I feel my sense perception. So
Hmm.
I feel inside like my hands and my feet, and as I bring that awareness down, it's something that feels really good. And that's actually from that book, The Power of Now by
Hmm.
Eckhart Tolle. And it was an exercise that he talked about in there. And ever since I've been doing it, it's been very easy for me to uh, like ground myself into the moment,
Yeah.
to feel more present.
Hmm.
And because of that, it's something that I do consistently. If I'm starting to feel, especially with the way that society is, where we have technology so easily at
Hmm.
our ability, there's
Yeah.
so many tools of technology. It's an amazing thing. But when we end up looking at a screen for a good part of the day, that can be something that kind of ungrounds us
You're
a
right.
little
Yeah.
bit. So that's
Hmm.
when what I'll do is, like, even me, the work that I do a lot of work on the computers.
Yeah.
So it's like I just have to bring that awareness back through so that I can feel grounded, and then I'm actually more productive anyways
Hmm.
from that point of view.
Yeah, it's also about like being mindful of certain situations, right?
Right.
Because you're like you're in nature and you're bewildered at like how beautiful
Oh
everything
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Even though like sometimes like we just get all these skyscrapers like in LA you just got have all these
Yeah.
skyscrapers and billboards, but
Yeah.
in that there's also something to be like there's also a kind of
Appreciation there.
appreciation, yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
we've
Going
come so
outside.
far kind of, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing with the idea of grounding that I've done
Hmm.
is sometimes what I'll do is I'll go outside and I'll walk barefoot on the ground.
Yeah.
And I find that that's just something that really brings me into the moment. And it could be a little bit of the idea that when you walk barefoot on the ground, you know your feet are feeling that sense perception, so it kind of
Hmm.
brings you down anyways.
It
In the
makes
like
sense. I mean, grounding,
exactly,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right. So just like the word itself, it's like
Yeah.
you're grounded, physically, and then as well as it's a symbol. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's something that I do every now and then too. If I'm on the computer for a long period of time, I'll just go outside. I'll ground myself,
Yeah.
just walking barefoot on the ground, and I'll feel a lot better afterwards. And also just being in nature in general. When you look
Yeah.
around, nature to me represents stillness. It represents non-resistance because,
Yeah.
like, when you see a tree that's like waving, it's even if the wind is coming, it's not resisting the wind. It's just there. It's just
Hmm.
allowing itself to be. So in the same
Yeah.
way, anytime it's a good reflection if we're going through something in life and we're resisting what is, to just
Hmm.
like allow the moment to be. So
Just
that's one
be. Yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one thing that I've also been able to really take from grounding and then being
Hmm.
outside as well.
Yeah. Well, Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body and how it's
Oh
kind
yeah.
of just like these little critters
Uh-huh.
attached to our aura, and we can't really um, let that go that easily, either
Right.
from emotional trauma or pain or something in the
Exactly.
past that we're
Mhm.
grasping onto, and that also is a form of resistance, you know.
It is. Yeah.
And so, what do you do to kind of get out of that, to really cleanse
Sure.
your pain body?
Sure. I would say uh, to do that, what I do is I become aware of
Mm-hmm.
the fact that my pain, like what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body, I
Mm-hmm.
become aware of when it's activated.
Right.
And one thing that I also learned from the book is that when you become aware of it, what you do is you're not identified as much with it. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're in the state to where you're feeling the emotions of that pain body,
Mm-hmm.
you are very identified with it. But if
Mm-hmm.
instead what you do is you observe it, which means you just kind of step to the side
Mm-hmm.
and you observe the fact that that's what's happening right now,
Right. Yeah.
what it does is it takes the effect out of you of feeling it so much. And then the other key to that is to allow it to be, because a lot of people, when they feel negative emotion, they resist it. And this is
Yeah.
something that I did for years. It was like anytime I felt negative
Oh
emotion,
yeah. Me too. Mm-hmm.
same thing, right? Like when you feel it, you just want to not feel it because it's something that's painful.
You
But
want to
if
reject it. Yeah.
exactly,
Immediately.
or
Just.
bottle it up, a lot of
Yeah.
people bottle it up.
Exactly.
But instead, what I learned to do, or also that Eckhart Tolle talks about in The Power of Now, what I've learned to do is to just simply allow it to be. So allow the even if it's pain, but allow the feelings
Just
to be.
feel through your body. Yeah, feel
Exactly.
it through. Uh-huh.
Exactly. And then as you do that, and as you let it be okay, it transmutes itself.
Hmm.
So it will literally go from you feeling it to you just observing it. And as you feel it and you allow the emotion to be there, it will start to go away.
Hmm.
And I think that's the key, because even with meditation in general, the one big shift I had with meditation was, rather than trying to control my thoughts, what I did was, when I was staring at that candle, instead of trying to control my thoughts, I would just allow the thoughts to go through.
Hmm.
It's like you're at a park and you're watching a dog go past. It's like you
Yeah.
just watch it kind of walk by. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to follow it. You don't have to try to make it do anything different.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing that I did. Is I would just observe my thoughts and allow them to be. And I've noticed that then the thoughts actually go away that much sooner,
Yeah.
because you can't fight your own thoughts. It's a losing battle. It's you
Hmm.
against you. So if you allow it to be, what you do is you allow yourself to feel better. And
Hmm.
because of that, the pain body won't be activated nearly as much.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So how can somebody really get into a state of flow, or what this the psychiatrist Chick, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his
Oh,
name right, Csikszentmihalyi,
oh, yeah.
he
Are you talking about
says,
his book Flow?
his book Flow, yeah,
Yeah,
he talks
yeah.
about how if you focus on your passions, it really just
Hmm.
makes you incredibly joyous, and
Oh,
like
yeah.
everything else doesn't seem to matter because you were in this state of
Exactly.
flow, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you experienced that yourself, or?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons I actually love creating YouTube videos,
Yeah.
because when I start to create them and I get my like ego out of the way and I
Mm,
just kind of like let go, that's when that flow starts, and that's when it becomes a feeling of something that I really enjoy doing.
yeah.
I think that anybody can find flow. It's a matter of just being willing to tap into and try to, figuring out what it is and following your excitement in every moment.
Yeah.
And I think with coming to the idea of passion in general, people finding what they're passionate about in life,
Hmm.
I think the key to that is to just simply follow the emotion of excitement.
Mm,
I think that the feeling of excitement is our body's translation that's saying, go do this, or
right.
keep going in this direction. And a
Yeah.
lot of times where we think that we need to have like some overarching purpose. I think
Hmm.
that many people do have, some type of overarching purpose or theme in their life.
Yeah.
But I think that if we focus on just being present and doing in every moment what
Yeah.
brings us excitement, over time, a natural byproduct of that will be us finding and living our passion anyways. It's like
Yeah.
micro momentum to macro momentum. You start doing little things every day,
Hmm.
and eventually it grows until where it's just a part of your life naturally.
Yeah. So for grad school, I'm interested in studying positive psychology, and one of the
Mm,
things that positive psychology mentions is that negative emotions really are like whispers, and like positive emotions. No, I'm sorry. Positive emotions are like whispers, and
okay.
negative emotions scream at you. And so negative emotions are so powerful that
Oh
they're
yeah.
they're just like out there, and then we don't often recognize the positive because they're sort of silent and they're whispers. And
Right.
once we try and acknowledge the positive moments and the
Hmm.
positive emotions inside us, then it really does change our perception
Oh
of
yeah.
how, you know. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
like we turn on the news and all we see is like,
Exactly.
violence,
Uh-huh.
and
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 we
so we
assume,
can't, yeah, we
and then it's
assume
like we
that's
assume
reality.
it's natural. So like
Yeah.
if like we put on, for example, like Housewives of New York or something like that,
Yeah.
or Atlanta or something, and we see these people like yelling at themselves, we might think that that's something that's very natural. We
Right.
think that
Yeah.
that's just part of human behavior. So then
Hmm.
maybe the next time something happens to us, we might not realize it, but we might react in a similar way,
Yeah.
because the more that that's put into our awareness, into our environment, even with the news, for example, seeing the
Yeah.
violence and seeing all of that, we think that that's something that's very normal and this is something that dominates in society,
Right.
when really it's just a point of view.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's a powerful thing to pay attention to what we put into our minds, just as much as the food that we put into our body. I think
Hmm.
it's important to pay attention to the kind of information
Right. Yeah.
that we absorb. So, in the same way, I think the more that we put in information, uh, that is positive, it's like it's going to be easier to connect to it and easier for that to be like the momentum that we have going.
Yeah.
And when it comes to positive emotion in general, I think that a powerful thing is momentum.
Hmm.
So I think that when we begin to develop more and more positive emotion, it becomes easier to have that to keep going. And then that negative emotion might come in, but it might not affect us as much because we
Hmm.
already have that positive emotion going.
Right.
So then it becomes paying attention and being grateful in your life and paying attention to things that bring you positive emotion, be around the people that make you feel good, and then at the same time do activities that make you feel good.
Right.
If it's just, walking through the park or doing simple things, it
Or
can
listening
be.
to music, or
Or
yeah,
listen,
any of that.
exactly. Listening to
Hmm.
music, anything that brings you into the moment, that makes you
Hmm.
feel good, that's creating that, what I call ecology of positive emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been exploring a little bit between authenticity and performance,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've been wondering about like the whole fake it till you make it approach does
Yeah.
work to a certain extent, but after a while you just really have to be authentic. You
Right.
can't fake something that you're not,
Yeah.
because that will just it tear you'll break down, you'll crash.
Exactly.
And
And it will feel
so yeah,
grueling. Yeah.
yeah. And so my question was, how do we have to start somewhere, obviously.
Right. Right.
And so that does require a certain faking it, right?
Mhm.
And so how do we get to that authentic state of just truly being yourself while at the same time exploring and growing and learning?
I think the first part of that is understanding who we are in a greater aspect. So
Right.
we look at our potential. And when
Hmm.
we realize that a lot of what we've lived up until this point in time now is who we thought we were, it's how we identified ourselves.
Hmm.
I think one thing humans always try to do is to remain consistent to how we define ourselves, to our self-image.
Yeah.
And if we're doing things that resonate with our self-image, we'll continue to do those.
Yeah.
So in order to expand beyond that, I think that the first thing we have to do is we have to let go of the self-image that we have
Mm.
to understand that we're always changing and progressing. Because if we
Yeah.
believe that this is who I am the rest of my life, we're going to continue to get the same results the rest of our life.
Right.
We have to constantly stretch outside our comfort zone, do new things in order to grow or to have new experiences.
Hmm.
So I think the first step is to let go of certain parts
Of
of
that
self-image.
self-image, yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
To let those go, and that the more that we let those go, the more, and what I mean by let that go is let go parts of the self-image that don't resonate anymore, that have
Right.
served you up until this point, but maybe they no longer actually benefit you. So it's being aware in the moment,
Hmm.
observing what those are, letting them go, and then allowing yourself.
Stepping outside and being an observer, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And that's the key to actually being present with it, is to step, even when you're stepping outside your comfort zone. What
Hmm.
makes it easier is for you to understand that all it is it's a new reference point. It's something that's not familiar because you haven't done it before,
Hmm.
but it's something that once you do, it becomes something that something you can do, and you become more confident
Hmm.
because you know that it's something that you can repeat from now going on. It's something that's very natural, which comes into the idea of sincerity, because as you do those things that feel unnatural at first, you then start to do them to a point to where it becomes natural.
Right.
So it's about letting go of the limitations, and it's about just becoming more, embodying it, being present to the moment, and
Hmm.
understanding that your potential is far outside of who you are now. Our
Hmm.
potential as humans is unlimited. All
Right.
we have to do is to claim it, to tap into it, and to take action from that point of view, and to know and believe that it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what should we do in the face of adversity? I mean, how can we like if
Right.
someone is challenging us, how can we just really be like, I'm not worried. I'm
Well,
going to remove my ego, you know?
right. One of my favorite quotes is by Napoleon Hill.
Hmm.
He talks in his book Think and Grow Rich.
Right,
He
yeah.
talks about how and I'm paraphrasing here, but he talks about how every situation that appears to be negative has a seed of positivity. It just takes
Mm.
us to see that seed. So I believe that in life in general, any situation that we get in, I think
Mm.
that the meaning of that situation is 100% up to us.
Right.
So there's no negative or positive meaning to it other than how we define it to be. So I think that the key to that would be to understand that we can give, even though something might appear to be negative, we can give it a positive meaning.
Mm.
Now, that could be something that happens and we realize that even though it's something bad that happened, we learned from it. And if we learned from it, we got a positive effect out of it. And because it's attributed to what we know now, and now we know more than we did before. So it's having that kind of mindset that as long as we give it a positive meaning, even though it's something that appears to be negative, doesn't mean lying about it and saying, oh, this is positive, this is positive. It means that
it's
you
like
observe.
reframing the situation and looking at it,
Like,
and looking at it from a
okay,
positive frame,
exactly. Whereas if we let that negativity eat us up, we'll never see the positive in it because of our state. It comes to our state. So it'll take our energy, our state will, our energy will go down if we just define it as negative. But if we look at it from a point of view as I'm going to learn from it, if there's some type of positive in it, what'll happen is from there, our state will go up because we'll realize that there's something that we learned from it. And then it makes it easier to actually move through it anyways. So I think that that's the main key when it comes to understanding more about positivity, negativity, and like how to overcome it. And also the vocabulary, I think. A lot of times when something bad happens, you can hear in their voice how they think about it. If they go, oh, it's a problem. It's a problem. If we change that to a challenge, and that's something we can get through. We can get through a challenge, but a problem is something that you can't figure out how to get through it because it's so solid. It's so concrete. So using the right vocabulary and thinking about it in that way, I think, is the most powerful way towards actually being able to get that kind of positive effect out of it.
I agree. I think I also use the word, instead of failure, I use the word feedback,
Yeah.
And,
yeah, exactly.
And it's just about rediscovering it yourself, really. It's like,
right.
And some people also use words like should, like it should be a certain way. And it's like set in stone, right? And that's also in the language. Like nothing should be a certain way, And I like to, Yeah,
and I think that should also, when we talk about being present to the moment, if we say something should be some other way than it is, there's all automatic resistance.
That's the
because
resistance,
we're automatically not allowing what is to be. We're assuming that it has to be different than what it is right in this moment.
Yeah.
Even if it's something that we want to change, we can notice that this is what it is, but then what we do is we take action from the perspective of how we want it to be, not resisting the moment, because if we resist it, we actually won't do whatever we want to do in a most effective manner anyways.
Right.
No.
So I'm very interested in like cliches and tropes and stereotypes.
Right.
So there needs to be a balance between using tropes and archetypes and stereotypes to our benefit, because we're ultimately trying to understand something better. And so so it's kind of just like you're generalizing, but you can't generalize to obviously offend or to, to cause harm. But if you have a different angle to it, it's really working towards our benefit. So where do you think that balance lies between really like embracing cliches and like parts of our culture, like pop culture, and just accepting it, and just like really questioning it and being like,
I think that it's about being able to just once again like be aware.
Right.
Be aware that also we're all connected. So in the sense that we have our own physical mind, we all together collectively make up the society that we live in. So all cliches are, or stereotypes are in a way, is that group thought in a way. It's like the grouping of those beliefs or those ideas, and then that becomes something that's more solidified in the general consciousness of our planet. So
the collective consciousness, as Carl Jung says.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that being aware that that's something that exists, but then also questioning it is important, because when you question the norm, or you question even like how most people, something that you maybe accepted since you were young, that's where social conditioning comes in, because that's where something that we just automatically assume that that's true, it then makes us in a way blind to other opportunities. So questioning things that happen in your life, questioning what you've always kind of accepted to be true, I think that's important towards making some type of deep transformational change. I think it's necessary in order to develop and to come up with new types of mindsets or
Yeah,
new types of thoughts in order
definitely.
to expand those ideas.
Hmm. So, my last and final question is about scarcity, and um, I know you're kind of familiar with this topic,
Mhm.
um, but I'm really curious about how can we get out of that mindset, that victim blaming mindset,
Right.
where we're like, oh my God, this is happening to me. Why is this happening to me? This always happens to me. And I see the law of attraction in the
Right.
back there too.
Yeah.
So how would you explain that to someone that is
I'm
really
glad you
just,
asked this
yeah,
because this is something I've been thinking about lately, and it's something
hmm,
that I'm going to eventually make a video on.
cool,
But it's about the idea of abundance in general.
right,
So when we think about the idea of abundance, what it really comes down to is how is our focus?
yeah,
Because we are never, I would say that we're never actually, there's never actually scarcity, or there's
hmm,
never actually that limitation
hmm,
other uh, than what we create in our own mind. So the idea is that we are always 100% abundant, but we might be in abundance of lack. Now that
mm,
comes from focus of lack. So if we continuously focus on what's not here,
mm,
what we'll do is we'll create more of it not being here. The
right,
paradox, the funny part of it is that the way that the law of attraction works is it gives you what you believe to be true. So if you
mm,
believe that you're only worthy of having lack, or you believe that that's something that you have in your life, then that will always be reflected back to you.
yeah,
So we are always 100% supported with what we want in life, or what, not what we want, but what we're focused on
mm,
and what we pay attention to. So the idea behind getting out of that like scarcity mindset is about just shifting the focus. And
mm,
instead of focusing on what's not here, or focusing on the fact that we don't have that abundance already, it's just shift it and to just focus on the feeling, because abundance at the end of the day
right,
is a feeling. You can be somebody that doesn't have much at all, but you can still feel abundance,
yeah.
and because of that, that's the feeling is what
And
people.
that's why gratitude is so important, right?
Exactly,
Hmm.
because it's saying that you already have
Already have
it.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think that that simple shift, that realization that we are
Mm,
always 100% supported, is
yeah,
important, because then what we can decide is what kind of beliefs or what kind of ways are we thinking about life that is not supporting us, and how can we tweak that? How can we then
yeah.
focus on abundance and relate to it and identify with it and drop that identification of scarcity?
That's awesome, dude. I
Yeah.
hope you have a great, abundant life, my
Thank you.
friend.
Yeah,
And thank you so much for connecting with me, bro. Like, this will obviously go on my channel, so be sure to check it out. I can
I will. Absolutely.
give your link right below. And
Yeah.
thank you, man.
Thank
Keep it
you.
easy. Take it
Yeah,
easy, man.
you too. Appreciate you, bro. You have a good one.
All right, peace out.
All right, bye.
Step your life game up, man.